of Island Transit. Vice Chair of Island Transit. Let's have a roll call now.
Melanie Bacon.
Jenny Bright.
Eric Marshall.
Craig Fear, and Janet St. Clair is absent.
And
Approved.
Jill Johnson. What about board member Norton? Is he on?
I
He's
do not see
He
him.
hasn't called in. He's not called in.
Okay.
Yeah.
May, could you just call him and remind him, please? We can proceed with the meeting, but just it might be helpful to
Sure.
remind him. Thank you.
Okay, so to clarify, is Commissioner Johnson a voting member of this august body or is waiting to be appointed? I'd like to know that.
You wanted to come to this meeting?
So my board hasn't appointed me, but as I thought it through, if all three of us are on here, then it's automatic. They could not appoint me. We only appoint when there were two.
But you were selected to come to the composition meeting, weren't you?
We were all invited.
Okay.
We're all invited equally for composition.
My position is that she's part of this board now, so.
Okay.
Okay, well, we have a
Okay.
ruling from our legal counsel that
Yeah,
we
it's
have
not- Yeah.
Commissioner Johnson, so you are a voting member. Thanks very much. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Moved. Oh, I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, being no discussion, all those in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, anybody? All right, we have an agenda. This is the time we set aside for members of the public to speak to the board about subjects of concern or interest or items not already set aside for a public hearing. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Public comment may be ended or modified if your comments become disruptive and are not germane to the business at hand. Input requiring lengthier comment is best submitted in writing. We read all comments. We listen to all comments. They are important. Do we have any members of the public wishing to provide comment? Have we received any written comments? All right, so I'm closing the public input. Now we have a consent agenda. On the consent agenda are minutes from the December 1st, 2023 regular business meeting and our
Ray, may I interrupt? I can
Yes.
see that Lance is trying to get a hold of us, so he's not a non-voting member, but I just wanted to let you know, he will be joining here as soon as I can get him tied in.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay,
My
Commissioner
turn, Meg.
Commissioner
Kenny, it's my
Bacon,
turn.
Commissioner Bacon by a nose. Do you want a second, Councilmember
Second.
Bright? All right, very good.
Who will
Any other item, does anybody want to pull anything off the consent agenda? All right, all those in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Nobody opposed. We just passed the consent agenda. Now we move on to business item number 1, to amend the board compensation policy resolution number 1-24.
Right, so Todd Morrow, Executive Director. Thank you, Councilmember Seer. As you can see in your packets and may have read, there's legislation that now provides for basically an automatic review every, I believe, 4 or 5 years by a government body, not us, to then increase the amount of board compensation for attendance at Island Transit meetings by non-commissioners, essentially. And what we're asking you to consider today is setting in place a way that will automatically allow that to happen from here on out, so that you don't have to have this motion every 4 years or 5 years, whenever this comes up. And just by way of background, the current compensation is $75. 90. Okay, thank you. And then this is increasing it. Basically, it's a COLA adjustment, and that's how it will be set in the future, not by us, but by a state body. And currently, they are setting it for this year, 2024, at $161. And so we're asking that you, if you're willing to approve that, pass this resolution that's before you. And certainly Meg, I want to thank, she's the one that's done the research and kept us up to date on this. And of course, we consulted with Matt as well. And that's why you have the resolution that's in front of you. And so Matt or Meg or I can try to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions? Do I hear a motion to
Oh,
amend
there's
the
a
board?
question
comp-
here.
Ah,
So
okay.
this is a flat rate reimbursement, not a meal reimbursement. Does it encompass mileage or is mileage separate from it? So it would be
$61
$161 a day,
a meeting, yeah.
a meeting.
Mhm.
But if like meetings provide meals or if meetings provide all of that, the person still gets the $161 on top of their pay that they're already getting to go to the meeting and on top of the mileage that they're getting to drive to the meeting.
Or you get a full-time, you're not qualified for that.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I wasn't saying me.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Right, but I mean, the person's getting paid to go to the conference, right? Because it's a salary, you're paid to go.
So this is just for council members on our board, the Island Transit Board. This is not for staff members.
So when you say me, you mean the county commissioner, so
Right,
they paid,
yeah.
but Eric gets the cash?
Because he doesn't.
Well, I'm for sure voting no now. Okay, I understand, I didn't
Sorry.
understand.
If you're receiving a full-time salary in your position, then you're not entitled to this additional.
I mean, I'm not opposed to meal payment plans, and those probably should get looked at.
That's travel policy, so that's
Okay,
separate
got
policy.
it. I didn't understand. I literally did not understand. This is the problem with new board members. Sorry.
Any other questions? Any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any other questions, so yes, we have a motion, so are we ready to vote? I think we are. Okay, all those in favor of amending the board compensation policy, resolution 1-24, signify by saying aye.
I don't think we have a motion.
Or a second.
Oh.
I don't have a motion,
Yeah,
or
we
I
have a
missed
sorry.
it.
All right, that was I'm remembering now it's the consent agenda motion. Okay, do we have a motion?
I move to
Please.
adopt resolution number 124.
Second, anybody?
Matt, do we need that full language
No.
or supersedes the other resolution?
No, this will be fine. Just the resolution number will be fine.
Okay. I'll second.
We have a second from Councilmember Marshall. Okay, any other discussion? All right, let's vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion passes. All right, now we move on to monthly reports. Our executive director report.
Great, thank you so much. First of all, I want to note, I believe board member Norton is now on the line. He represents
No.
our, no?
He's not.
Oh, it's
I'm
not.
sorry. We've been unable to reach him. We tried home and mobile
Okay.
and no answer, and we
Want to
cannot leave.
then welcome Councilmember Eric Marshall from the city of Oak Harbor. We're really glad to have him joining us. And also Commissioner Jill Johnson from the County Commission of Island County. Thank you both. Welcome. And we hope that you'll enjoy your time working on island transit issues. Every month I give a written executive director's report that's usually sent out to you like the day before or later. We try to have as fresh of information in it as possible. At the board meetings, I don't cover every item on there because it would take too long. I try to just cover highlights. But this is our way to give you updates on key things that are happening at Island Transit, just so if you get questions in the public, hopefully you'll have the information to answer them. And I always start with ridership because that's why we're here, is to provide transportation and bus rides. That's why we have Sean. And the good news is that for the month of December, our ridership has slowly continued to increase. We're now down only about a third, it's 27.4% of what we were pre-pandemic. And so we've been slowly increasing every month. We're really pleased about that. The other thing that I would like to report with regard to our service performances, specifically with regard to our zone 2 on Camano Island, that is in fact our highest ridership of our on-demand services that we have. The next highest ridership is the zone 6, which basically connects with the Coopville Ferry and the area between Coopville and the Coopville Ferry. Zero emission transition, obviously that's a huge thing here at Island Transit. And I think most of you know that we now have fully functioning battery electric chargers in our back lot for our Island Transit vehicles. Also, we're working now with Civic Initiatives and Hatch, one of our consultants, to develop a design build request for proposals that will actually then help us with the hydrogen fueling aspect of our zero emission transition. So there'll be a lot more to come on that. Terry's Corner Staff Support Facility on Camano Island. Wanted to update you on how that project's going. Finally, we did get approval from the State Department of Transportation's Real Estate Division to go forward and obtain permits from Island County. We needed WashDOT's approval. We need it because it's on WashDOT land. What's been holding things up is that WashDOT is also insisting that Island Transit pay an airspace lease for privileges of building this bathroom and break room on their property. And obviously, we have been suggesting that that's not appropriate. And so we've been trying to negotiate that. And we thought we had an agreement with WashDOT this last summer that we would pay $500 a year for that privilege. Well, what happened was the airspace lease documents weren't drawn up and we didn't sign them. And then this employee that had negotiated that left. Now they have new employees and they're very black backlog. So right now they're telling us they want us to pay and they want us to pay more, but they're working on it right now. And so just want to let you know that we're working with the governor's office, with one of our state legislators, with other folks in WashDOT to try to persuade them that the benefit of this bathroom and break room is of importance to the traveling public on Highway 532 because it will increase the safety of our coach operators who will be rested and not have to worry about going to the bathroom and all those things. And so therefore there is a public benefit, therefore they should waive any airspace lease or cost to us. So we're working on that. Secondarily, maybe even more importantly, we're trying to get WashDOT to allow us to proceed to construction once we get the county permits and not make us wait until their staff figures out how much they want us to pay. Right now, they're saying that might not be till June. And, you know, we've been working on this project. We've been waiting. We're anxious. So just wanted you to be aware of that. It's obviously very frustrating for all of us, and our drivers over on Camano, you know, deserve better. So the good news is we have state funding that will pay for a portion of that project. On the recruitment level, I wanted you to be aware we have 3 job events coming up that we're really excited about. Each one is at a Snow Isle library. One's up in Oak Harbor, one's down in Freeland, and then we have one over on Camano as well. These are really critical for us because, as you know, we need to hire particularly more coach operators. And that's really important to us just for ongoing service, but also to be able to do evening service, which is the final piece of our Island Transit Maximize plan. We are fortunate at Island Transit. We have a really good staff, and one of them has a background in, I don't know what you call it, but she's got a great voice. And so we actually she was able to create these ads for us, radio ads that are actually on Cafe 104.1 and KISM, among other things. And of course, we're doing all sorts of other promotions. So we've already got people interested, and we find that these are great ways to get people in and actually very quickly begin the process of evaluating and helping them. The speed is so important in terms of recruiting, and we've got the 3 folks here that help with all of that. So big deal, very excited. And any promoting of that, I know Commissioner Bacon has a great newsletter that she puts out. Any promotion, cross promoting of that would really help us because we need more people. I wanted to also report on vehicle maintenance that the toolboxes, you recall that you authorized the purchase of these toolboxes for all of our mechanics. They're actually all in use now. And so that's very exciting. And that helps us, particularly when it comes to recruitment. Our mechanics don't have to come with their own very expensive toolboxes, and this is something that Councilmember Marshall knows all about. On the RideLink program, just wanted to mention that our last battery electric vehicle has been assigned a group. It's here right now because we're actually rebranding it, but a group will actually get it. So we've got 5 groups that are using battery electric vehicles. Also wanted to mention with regard to finance and payroll, you may recall that you authorized us buying new software to help with both of those things. And in fact, we are now using both Paycor, which is our payroll software, and NetSuite, which is our finance software. They're in place. Thank you for that. On the media front, I think those of you who look at the local newspaper or the Herald may have noticed we had a great story about an adventure on one of our buses by an Everett Herald reporter who wanted to see how cheap and what fun it would be to take the ferry across and get on an Island Transit bus and ride up to Deception Pass. And it featured Tino Gutierrez, who's one of our more senior coach operators, and had photos, and there was a copy of it in the most recent edition of Whitby News Times. I don't think they had the photos there, but anyway, great article, and we had nothing to do with it, but we were just happy to see it, and that's all good. And then the last thing I just want to mention is I think most of you know that we have a rebranding event where we are going to unveil our new brand to the public. And unfortunately, this is scheduled, I think, when all the county commissioners have their meeting, which I'm very disappointed by, but it's Tuesday, January 16th at 10:30 a.m. We've been inviting the public, sent out invitations, things like that. And it will be a lot of fun. If you can't be here, we'll show you some photos and things later. That concludes my report. If there are any questions or comments, certainly I can receive those.
Yeah, Todd, this is Melanie. So when you're talking about recruitment, you mentioned coach operators. You said you're recruiting for coach operators, and then a moment later you were talking about the toolboxes, and you said that it's good for recruiting mechanics. Are we recruiting mechanics as well?
I think not right now. We have a full complement of them, but we're always concerned if someone leaves and then we have to recruit someone, particularly if they're coming straight out of the Navy or they're younger, they may not have a tool set. But we're full right now with mechanics, thankfully.
Great.
We want to
thanks.
keep it that way.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Todd?
So what is the biggest challenge in recruiting the coach operators? I mean, it seems, I'll give you my opinion, if you don't mind, is what, I looked at that process, and it seems to me like those that are getting hired are going to be on call immediately. And is that a correct assessment, that they're immediately on call? And so for somebody who's looking to support their family, or there's no guarantees there. That makes it very leery to want to invest the time to do the training and to go through that process, and then not have any guarantee of hours and not necessarily be able to pay their family. And so do you see that as being a challenge? Is that something you faced?
It may be a perception, but given the reality of our need for people to actually drive the buses, it isn't. And Robin or Sean, maybe you might want to share your observations, please.
Our people who come in are kind of part-time, they're relief operators. So they are the people who, when other operators are on vacation or out for medical leave or various reasons, those operators are filling those shifts. So it's kind of changes depending on what shift they're filling, and they call in the night before is when they call in and they get their shift for the next day. So it's kind of the nature of the scheduling and what those people, what we're bringing them in to do, because we always will need this number of relief operators to fill those vacancies. And it's as they get more senior, they then become eligible to get a bid, which is a set schedule. They know that, but that's kind of on a seniority basis that they move into those positions.
This is all negotiated with the union. It's in the collective bargaining agreement, how we do all of that.
So really, it sounds like you're looking for almost part-time people initially, because it's,
Yeah.
So it's, okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
To Eric's point, though, do we guarantee a certain number of hours at that? So it's not that you could get 12 hours, that when you're hired even as a relief driver, they know that they're getting a certain amount. They're guaranteed something.
Correct. They're
Correct.
guaranteed 20-hour minimum a
Okay.
week, and generally they're more than that.
And is that conveyed? Is that part of that process? That's on the, when they find it on the website? That's,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. All right.
You go, Jenny.
Oh, you go.
Okay, so I just want to just to clarify, Todd, with regard to the rebranding public rollout. So that's going to be the Island Transit Building and all the public is invited to attend if they want to.
Absolutely, yes, it's here, yeah. What's that?
They have to let me know, so
We need RSVPs, I'm being told, if someone plans to come, if they could just call our general phone line and let us know. But we're not turning anybody away. We'd be thrilled if 300 people came, and I think we'll be lucky to get 30, but yeah.
That's not true. Craig, Craig, I just had a quick question for Robin. Going back to the previous discussion about hours and so if it's a 20-hour minimum expectation for them, when do they become, at what threshold do they become benefit eligible? Because I think that kind of thing goes hand in hand. If they're only going to get 20 and not be benefit eligible, there also is, a persistency risk. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. They become, they go through a training program, which is about 8 weeks, Sean, is that? And so they become eligible for benefits upon completion of training.
Okay, without a requirement for minimum hour or minimum hours?
No, I'm sorry, they are, upon hire, well, when they're in training, they're working full-time hours. So they're paid the
Okay.
number of hours they work. And when they come out of training, that's when the 20-hour guarantee starts.
Okay, but they're not at risk of losing benefits that they may have elected because they've gone below a full-time threshold.
No, because they're correct. They're not eligible
Okay.
for benefits while they're in that full-time training program. While they're in training, they're not eligible for benefits. When they complete training, they get their CDL, complete training, that's when they're now eligible for benefits. And most of them are they're moving into a part-time position, depending on, depending on our staffing levels. Some people maybe move right into a bid if other people chose not to take one, or if we're that short staffed. So it kind of depends on the status of our staffing level, but they move from training typically into part-time status at a guaranteed minimum 20 hours and benefits.
Okay, thank you.
I have some questions about this, and I super appreciate Council Member Marshall bringing this issue up. So as they come out of training and go to a part-time status, if they're new to the agency, which they definitely are, they start at the bottom of the pay scale, which is $21.60, I believe, and I may have the cents off there a little bit. So they get 400. So if they're at 20 hours, they get $400 a week. $400 a week. That to me seems like that could be a problem. And in fact, I know from conversations I've had with relatives of new operators that they were unable to continue to be at Island Transit because they did not know when they were going to move up to a full-time 40 hours. So I have all kinds of concerns about this. In fact, I think it's worth a discussion later on, maybe not for this board meeting, but thank you, Councilmember Marshall, for bringing this up. I think it's a significant issue. Okay.
There's another question.
Where are you in your Island County permitting? Is that moving smoothly or where? I understand the WASDOT hold
Yeah.
that. I want to make sure WASDOT doesn't get resolved before Island County gets resolved.
Yeah,
So where are we in our permitting on
I
that?
think the applications are in, the materials have been submitted, and that's where it is. We don't need to do a pre-application because Island County is so familiar with the project.
So you're not having any hangups?
Not that I'm aware. Yeah, thank you for asking. Appreciate that. And I would just also remind everybody that all of what you just talked about in terms of pay is all subject to our collective bargaining agreement, and we're kind of in the middle of that 3-year agreement. And we certainly can talk about it more later, so we will do that.
Okay, any other questions for Todd regarding the executive director's report? Okay, I don't see any, and I think we're
This
now
is
moving
Lance
to.
Norton, Labor Representative.
Go ahead,
Join the
Lance.
meeting.
Hi, Lance. Good morning,
Welcome.
Lance. Welcome. All right, so I think we're now moving to the finance manager's report, and Paul is absent. So I think to Todd.
Right, that's correct. So in your packets, Paul has provided financial information that's under the goldenrod, I think that you call that cover. But he also does a slide presentation, which I don't think are in your packets. And I'll just quickly go over those. This is to help present his summary of where we're at in terms of cash. Recall that these statements are for November because of how we need time to report. So this is not December, this is for the month of December. And you'll see for November 2023, our revenue was up slightly, which is a good thing, versus what it was a year ago. And so we're up 1.86%. And those sales tax are actually collected in September, just so you know. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see that the amount that was collected was actually, even though it was a little bit higher than a year ago, it was actually 1.11% below what we had budgeted for that period. Not a significant amount, $17,095. But the good news is overall, when you look at this graph and calculate things out, we are actually ahead of budget for the year in terms of sales tax collection, ever so slightly. So we're okay, in other words. And if we go to the next slide, nothing really remarkable here for the month of November. So let's go to the next slide. This is the graph that shows what we're getting on our investments with the local pool that we have with Island County, which is that green line. We're part of that. And then the top line is the local government pool, which is what we used to be in, that orangish yellow line. And then the blue line is kind of where 2-year treasuries are at. So you'll see the good news is that the amount of interest we're earning, even though it's lower than the local government pool, it's in fact increasing right now, which is good. And for instance, in November, we earned $118,000 in interest. This is a topic that we want to take up at some other point about this, but if you have any questions about it.
I was just gonna ask, are we still putting money into that
Yes.
local pool?
Yeah.
Or are we diverting to like LGIP
No.
and others?
No.
Still doing that?
We're still doing that, yeah, and we meet regularly with the treasurer to talk about that, yeah. Then if we go.
Excuse me. This is the labor representative. I've been given a different meeting ID number, and now it seems that we have connected. Thank you for your patience. I didn't want to interrupt Todd, but
Yeah,
I'm
no
back
worries.
online.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you. Sorry about the confusion.
So
Yeah, me too.
I did want to reply to Commissioner Johnson's question. Yes, we have had the discussion about the gap between the returns we're getting currently and the LGIP, which you can see if somebody goes back to the previous slide, you can see it's approaching a 3% difference. In fact, is exactly 3% different right now. So it's about $1.5 million. Is that what we calculated, Councilmember Bright? I think that's how much that
were right
if we are invested in the LGIP. So anyway, I just wanted you to know that.
All right, so if we go to the, thank you, cash usage page, you'll see that payroll was down slightly, non-payroll was up a little bit. Nothing really unusual with that. And if we go to the next slide, regarding our capital payments, you'll see that there are some smaller capital payments there for the month, but nothing large. And then if we go to the next slide, which is cash reserves, you can see that the amount of cash that we invested in the pool increased by $446,000. If we go to the next slide, this just shows where our cash reserves are in terms of for what particular programs. And again, nothing is unusual here, pretty much the same trend line over the period of many months. And then the next slide is our budget actual revenue slide, and it shows that our revenue was above budget for van pool, local sales tax, and federal grants. Some of the other things were on hold. If you look at the bottom of the slide, you'll see where it says 91.67%. That's what you want for the month of November, and we were ahead of that in different categories, including interest. The small amount that we get for van pool fares and federal operating grants. And then if we go to the next slide, this is the one that's really critical in terms of expenses. And I just want to share with the new board members that last month the board did pass a 2024 budget. One of the things that I'll provide to you is a copy of that and go over that with you so you have some sort of understanding. But the good news is that in terms of expenses, we're very much under budget, and that's because we also thought we would spend some on capital projects that hasn't happened this year that will be carried over to next year. So that's why there's the huge gap that you see there. And then if we go to the next slide, this is the fuel cost. It's down from last month and down from a year ago, so that's a good thing. And then the last slide shows the fuel cost per gallon, and you'll see that it has decreased for each one of these types of fuel that we used for the last month. So that concludes the financial report. If there are questions or comments on that, we can certainly handle those.
You're muted, Melanie.
I think we're ready to move on.
Melanie, did you have a comment? No, okay. All right, so now we are moving on to other business, and this section of the agenda is about board member, entertains board member comments. Are there any comments this morning? I'm not seeing any. All right, so we'll now move on to, we are going to close this business meeting, and we're going to transition to executive session number 1. We are going to meet in executive session to discuss with our legal counsel, which represents the agency, litigation or potential litigation as allowed by RCW 42.3.1101I. The board will be in executive session until about how long, Matt?
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. All right. The board is not expected to take any action following the executive session.
And board member Norton, I think, assuming it's okay with council and our vice chair, please stay on.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Matt, do you want to give them an update, please?
Okay, just
Oh, wait,
brief-
hold. So we are back out of executive session. We've closed it, and at 10:08 a.m. I'm calling the regular meeting back to order. And now we're going to go into executive session. We will now meet in executive session to consider the selection of a site or acquisition of real estate as allowed by RCW 42.30.1101B. The board will be in executive session for how long, Matt?
Oh, gosh, maybe, how about 20 minutes?
Sorry about 10. You can always.
Okay, start with 10.
Okay, we're starting 10 minutes. That seems optimistic to me, but anyway, the board may take final action.
You can always
following-
extend, but you can't shorten. So if you want to consider it,
Okay, may take final action following the executive session.
2 minutes before we take. That's why I don't make them long.
We are now moving back into our regular meeting. I'm calling it back to order. Is there a motion and a second?
I move on behalf of the Island Transit Board of Directors to accept the appraisal review for the subject property and authorize the executive director to make an offer for purchase based on the estimate of just compensation.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Discussion. I'm gonna vote in favor of this purchase. I believe that it was well researched and well thought through. I also, appreciate the fact that transit locations often incentivize other types of growth in an area and might also add to Island County's desire to increase affordable housing in the raid. And so for the reason of stimulus, and then also the opportunity to increase transit utilization in that area, I'm going to be in favor.
Any other comments? I don't see any. Are we ready to vote? I think we are. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes.
Hooray.
Let's all have a collective high five on this one. Todd says this has been working on this over a year. It's 2 years. It's not 1 year. We've been waiting a
2
year.
years.
We've been working on this for 2 years. So it's really nice to see this come in for a landing.
Still have some work to do.
All right.
And we're
I
not
am going
publicly
to-
discussing it until we own it, so.
Yes, I'm not gonna write about it.
Yeah. Thank you. But
Okay.
we love it when you do write things.
All right, so I'm going to first, once again, welcome our new board members, Commissioner Johnson, Councilmember Marshall, and I'm adjourning the meeting at 10:40 a.m. Thanks very much, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Lance.
Yeah, goodbye, everybody.